everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Newport City Council for Monday, May 5th, 6 o'clock in the council chambers. Present are myself, President Kevin Charbonneau, Councilmember Carter Finnegan, Councilmember John Manette, Councilmember Andrew Touchette, Treasurer James Johnson, and it looks like we have Tom Bernier from Department of Public Works in the room. We have a light crowd tonight. So I'll ask first if there are any additions or deletions. Carter?
I have a thing to invite the council to, so it'll be chronologically letter F. Okay, I'll just.
I think you can just, why don't you just do it under new business?
That's all I had.
Okay. Yeah. Andrew?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. John?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Okay. Kevin?
Nothing for me.
Jim?
Nothing.
Okay, and I have nothing to add either. Our consent agenda tonight includes the approval of the minutes from the 30th of April. It includes an AP warrant from the, I think that's a typo. Jim, it says on the agenda 3/28, but I think it's 4/28, right?
Yeah.
My apologies. The AP warrant should say 4/28/25. The payroll warrant from 4/29/25. And a liquor license request from Green Mountain Farm to School for their truck called the Lunchbox.
Liquor license?
No.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That might be inappropriate. Yeah, let's just move right along, shall we? So, any questions about the consent agenda from the members of the council?
I move that it be approved.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from the president. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda, and I think I saw Frank come in. Are you here, Frank?
I am.
Great. Maybe you could speak to this. This item regarding preliminary wastewater allocation application and an application for water allocation turn on for Turtle Pier and Nancy Cook. Can you come forward?
Normally Tom.
Oh, Tom, you want to come talk to that, please? Just a quick description of what it is we're approving. Or
It's
disapproving.
normal sewer allocation for a new house off of Farron Street. You have the paperwork, the water, I can normally sign off on the water, but the sewer is always signed off by the city council.
That's helpful. Okay,
If that's a new house going up, that's what that's for.
great. Loving it. Any questions from the council?
One comment, it's my mother-in-law, so I'm going to.
You gonna step back on this one? That seems appropriate.
Good move.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the preliminary wastewater allocation application and the application for water allocation turn on?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Hearing none, the motion passes, noting that Kevin Charbonneau abstained. Okay, item 5 is a special permit request, and I think Markel Webster is here, and we'll invite him to speak to the request and what it's about. And I'll let you all know that Markel has met with Mike Brown and the fire chief and the chief of police. And so I have some of their response and their recommendation to council, but I want to give Markel a chance to describe what it is that he's doing before we try and have that conversation. So go ahead, Markel.
Yeah, Markel Webster. I live in Arlsburg, but I used to live over here on 3rd and Prospect Street, that White House over there. So, quick rundown. I do make music. That's where I started from back in 2015, and just trying to figure out a different way to do something around here because there's not very much stuff to do in Orleans County as a whole. So because of that, over the past 10 years, I've been working on my craft, and now I stepped into the entertainment business, and so now it's those shows and concerts, and through the success of that, I've been able to build the foundation of that. And now I said, I want to build a community of, musicians or people who enjoy it. And so I tried to do that in Burlington, but then I said, wait a minute, I'm not even from Burlington, nobody knows me out there. So I come out here, I said, wait a minute, Orleans County is like kind of a cheat code because people know me around here. I've been here for 20 years, so I went right over here to UCA, went over to Lake Region my sophomore year. And so I'm very, very familiar with the town. And so I want to do a music festival, and not just a one music festival. I like to make this an annual thing, and not just with local musicians. I like to have them involved as well. but I like to bring nationally known artists right here. And I do already have a headliner set up. And like I told everybody at the meeting, that this festival will be happening with, or unfortunately without you, because at the same time, I know that this isn't just specifically for Newport, but for Orleans County as a whole. One, we need something, a new identity change. Aside from the hole in the ground, we'd like something different after that. So this festival would stimulate economic growth. It would definitely have a new cultural identity, Newport to have something to hold on to. And I already said too that Gardner Park would be a perfect place to do it. Labor Day weekend, 2-day festival, Saturday, Sunday. So I guess the only problem is what'd you say, Rick?
Well, I'll review with them, and people can ask questions, but I've got some feedback from the department heads that I can offer too.
Okay. So pretty much expecting 3,500 to 4,000 people to show up. I know that's a lot of people around here, and I know that the Fish concert 21 years ago, kind of caused a lot of PTSD for that type of event. And, because I'm pretty sure the National Guard had to get involved, and my aunt, Dina, who owns the East Side, she said she had to feed the National Guard. So it was definitely quite the event. But at that same time, when's the last time we've had that type of event around here to where people can really cling on and say, man, I wish something that could happen like that again. 164,000 people, I believe, were at that thing. I'm saying 3,500. Honestly, that is a very controllable number. We get the right security, we get the right, land layout. And I think it'd be a very good thing for the city, for the county. And I've told Rick that by year 3, this will be New England's biggest music festival, and I'd like to start right here. So that's all I got. So thank you.
Thank you, Markel. Don't go far in case there are further questions. So, council members, I'll just share that we met, it was the last Tuesday, I think, wasn't it? With Kevin Lacoste, the fire chief, Travis Bingham from the police department, and Mike Brown from the recreation department. And we had quite a conversation trying to figure everything out. In the end, it was the shared wisdom of the department heads that this is a pretty big bite for us to try and take as a first attempt at something like this. I can name the primary concerns. One is that with a 2-day festival, it means that we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 to 4,000 people coming in, and nowhere really for them to go on the night in between. So there were concerns about, do we end up with people camping all over the place? Are there security questions that come up with that? So that was one question. A second question was just the challenge of trying to contain the boundaries of Gardner Park, and how to use Gardner Park almost entirely for this purpose without closing off public access to things like the new playground. So we went through a lot of conversation about that, trying to figure out what it would take to try and do that. It's not like a fairgrounds that's been enclosed or surrounded by secure fencing. We have a wide open full side on the Western Avenue side, at least. So those were a couple of the kind of logistical challenges. The biggest challenge, I think, is the one that our chief of police has, which is just that he's really concerned about trying to having the capacity to provide police safety and support. We did talk with Markel about bringing in an outside security company and staffing it significantly with that outside company. Travis is saying that he would need 2 to 4 officers on the grounds throughout the concert himself, and he has concerns about whether or not he can even pull that off on a holiday weekend with the force the size that it is. And then the last concern that I think everybody was just trying to get their heads around is what would happen with parking. So much of the park would be used for the event itself that the amount of parking available in Gardner Park would be pretty limited. So we'd be looking at trying to figure out other locations. Markel has some creative ideas about that, including the possibility of using the school, for instance, and providing a shuttle bus or that kind of thing. So at the end of the day, I think all 4 of us who were sitting with Markel were receptive to the idea and really highly anxious about the logistical and security challenges around it. So Mike wrote back to Markel immediately following that meeting and said, we know this may not work for you, but we would love to try something at a smaller scale, maybe selling 1,000 tickets and making it a 1-day event, so it's not an overnight in the middle of the full event. And Markel responded in a totally understandable way, saying that really the numbers on that just don't work. The financial numbers on such an event don't work from his perspective. So I wanted to put it in front of the council for your deliberation and for the folks in the community to know that we're talking about this. And while I think all of us have concerns about some of those security questions, also, I think all of us were trying to figure out what does it look like for Newport to begin to set itself up so it has the capacity to do these kinds of events in the future. And I think that's a, Markel, if you think I've missed anything or represent anything, you know, fairly. So I'd love to hear maybe first from council members, and then we can ask if anybody in the community has concerns or questions or ideas they'd like to raise.
I guess my only concern, or one of my concerns, is the crowd control. Being a holiday weekend, what is that going to look like for not only the PD but other people as well? Here he's got Public Works and volunteers. How many people are you thinking that are going to volunteer? How much are you think? What are you looking at to Public Works, because there's a cost occurred to that, and what is the availability? Their availability. I also have the renting of portlets. Are those going to be cleaned both days? Are they going to be cleaned multiple times per day? Because they're going to need access. Whoever's doing that's going to need access to those as well. And if the crowd is anything like it was, and I know it's a much bigger scale with a concert, with a Fish concert, but that was not fun. So those are my only concerns.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
What is the parking capacity at the park?
Oh, I think, if set up the way that Markel has in mind, where almost the entire soccer field that borders on Western would be where the stage would go according to that drawing that we sent you. It means that it would probably take out most of the parking along that parking lot, except for VIPs or event, whatever it takes to put the event on. So really, you'd have to be looking at deeper inside the park, and the likelihood is that if we got 50, 60 spaces, we'd be doing well. So then we'd be looking at probably across the street and trying to arrange something with the Waterfront Plaza, or doing something remote.
But all of the businesses in Waterfront Plaza are open
During that time as well.
during that time, so it's not like they'd be closed.
High school only has about 300 or 400 spaces at most, and that's used in the Legion.
Yeah, I get excited when an idea like this to bring music to our community pops up, and I've heard and talked to, I know Joseph's on the call, but about Jazz Fest that used to be in Newport.
Yeah. Can't quite hear you.
Oh, sorry. So I have heard in the past about music festivals that have happened, and even just the small things that do occur in our community, it really is quite a reason to come together. This one is the fact that it is this year on this holiday. I don't know if Markel, you could speak to like your organizing group, because I'm part of a local group that does Pride Fest, and it's a year in the making, and they have many volunteers and a lot of support. So I don't know if you want to talk about if it's just you leading this and it's your like full-time project and it's something you're diving into, or if you have like tiers of support, because I think that's what I'm mostly curious around too. Yeah, with that.
Yeah, so you familiar with Vaughn Clooney over there at the cigar shop across from, was it Galvin, the new place? So this isn't also just a music festival. This is going to have many different parts. So the music part, that's the biggest part of it. Then we have the 3-on-3 basketball tournament. We like to use that court for it. I put Vaughn in charge of that, delegated it to him. For insurance reasons, it'd be 15 teams tops, 75 players, just to keep that part, controlled. And then we got the food trucks I like to have on that road where the roundabout is. And then that stage, that's on that little piece of land right there. I like to have a local talent show. I like to delegate that out to somebody else. As for who's, if it's my full-time project, semi-full-time project, yeah. But I also do, I own a barbershop, I do music myself and all that stuff. So I do a lot of stuff. But one of the big questions too is, or not a question, more of a statement is, it seems like a lot of work for you to be doing by yourself. In reality, yeah, it is. But at the same time, I have experience doing this. While it's only my second year in business doing the entertainment part, I have been working with people in the industry and this type of thing for about 10 years now. And then working as a barber, you hear people's plights and all this different type of stuff that they want to have happen in the area. And yeah, every time I bring up about a festival, oh, we need that. Oh, we gotta have. Wish Newport has something like that. And so community-wise, people are definitely for it. Something of this magnitude, like I said, is probably cause for concern because of the Fish concert. But I feel like personally 3,500 is a very controllable number, especially with the right security guards, layout and everything. And yeah, but I guess I like to say I'm delegating a lot of the stuff to people. So it's definitely taking a lot of work off myself. So.
Are there questions, comments, concerns from the community? Carl and then Jennifer?
Yeah.
If you could stand up, Carl.
Carl King, resident. I'm just wondering, is there another viable, suitable place in Newport that may work for you, other than just that?
Honestly,
Or you keep mentioning Orleans County, another suitable.
so honestly, the music part can happen anywhere. That can happen in the field. But the second biggest part about it is the basketball tournament, because we got the basketball thing, men's league downstairs. Vaughn is in charge of that. And the first time I brought it up to Vaughn the festival, which was in October after my last show in Burlington, I said, I'd like to do something like that. He's like, man, I've been trying to, have some type of tournament or something like that, but for like 20 years, I haven't been able to get anybody. Boom, here I am. And then, so it could be anywhere, but the second main part is we need to be able to have a basketball court somewhere for this tournament. Because I want the tournament to be its own separate entity as well, mixed in with the festival. And Garden Park is so perfect because you put the stage right on the soccer field, you got the basketball court right there, and music's not going on the whole time. In between, people don't want to do stuff, they go watch that basketball tournament, they go to the food trucks, So.
Thank you. Jennifer, would you stand up, please?
Sure. Sorry for the appearance right out of the garden. So, Jennifer Bierling, resident, Newport. How many people came for the eclipse?
That's what I was going to ask.
Anybody's guess, but we think probably 20,000.
Yeah. And so we kind of did okay with that.
Yes.
It was spread out all over the city.
Yeah.
The city was gridlocked and there was no parking. This was actually a big part of our conversation on Tuesday with Travis.
Okay.
It's just the challenges around that. I mean, it stretched the city about as far as it could be stretched, and there was a lot of work that went into it for many months to plan it.
Yeah. It took me 2.5 hours to drive 2.5 miles at 11:30 that morning from the east side to the west side.
Right. I mean, I know that the traffic was indeed backed up. I know that, but from a standpoint of security, and it wasn't like everything just went off the rails.
No, I guess one of the questions about security that we talked a lot about is the fact that Markel's going to have to be charging, this will be a ticketed event. So how you even manage the entrance and exit from the property itself, that was one thing we didn't have to worry about at all with the totality.
The eclipse.
Right.
And then the next question would be, for Markel, would you ever consider doing a one-day event to get started rather than 2 days?
That's the question we asked, and you're welcome to talk about why that's a challenge, Markel.
So, originally, this past winter, it was real hard for me, I ain't gonna lie. So I was like inside, I was trying to plan this whole thing. This whole notebook is literally what I did this whole winter, And so going over these things, I went over the security, I went over logistics and everything. And I said, you know what, why don't we just do a one-day thing, just as a tester and everything, to try to see if the festival would be all right even. But then I said, like I said, I've been living in Newport or Orleans County for 20 years. I know that there's even just the smallest event, people are gonna come to it. Any night on the plaza, the Hoagies and the movie theater are packed, and they're just gonna go eat dinner. They're just gonna go watch a movie. Imagine we bring out something big like that. How many people? Honestly, reality is, by me having it in Newport, I'm cutting my potential profits down by about 60 to 70%, just by being able to only have 3,500 people. But it's kind of like having trouble with that number, anyways. So, but this is more of a goodwill thing, honestly, to bring the community together, to build a community. Just by putting the playground up, I've never seen so many people there in like past couple of years, and they're just going to be on the playground. This type of magnitude of an event would bring so many more people involved that, who knows what happens. Maybe we can get that hole filled up with somebody like a big investor or something. You know how that goes. So pretty much where we're at.
Thank you. I'm going to just ask folks, if you've already spoken, unless it's really critical, I'm going to try and move us along. We have more things on the agenda. Tom?
I'm not against it. My biggest concern would be that park is everything to the city, and those fields are so heavily used. I remember the fish concert. I was on the fire department. We were at the time still spreading our sludge at the fields out there. And what happens after we have a rain? And honestly, I would die if our fields got trashed, because that's, you know.
We did talk quite a bit about the possibility that if we had a big rain event, it could turn it into a mud bath over there.
Yeah.
It'd be really hard to get our fields recovered.
Okay, I think unless there are further comments from the community, I'm going to bring it back and ask if there are any other comments that council would like to make. Hearing none, I would accept a motion either to approve or deny this permit.
I would make the motion based upon the advice of our department heads and the logistics that we deny this permit as it's written.
I have a motion to deny the permit as written. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further comment or question from any of the members of council?
With the moving to deny, is there a chance to like encourage revisions and maybe having this conversation again?
I think the city, the department heads have responded about what they think could be manageable.
Okay.
And certainly if Markel and the department heads were to come to an agreement that they'd like to try and pursue something on that scale, we'd bring it back to council.
And the motion said denial as written, so it leaves the
Yeah.
door open.
That's the purpose, right?
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. All of those in favor of the motion to deny the permit, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes. And Markel, I'll just say, I really hope this is the first conversation and not a last about other possibilities to work with you in the future.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you for all your time.
I will.
Okay, thank you, council members. Okay, moving on to item 6. This item is the proposed task force regarding housing insecurity, public encampments, and community safety. And everyone should have, and there are copies here if anybody in the community would like to see them, a copy of what we put together. I'd like to give a little bit of background about where this came from, and then open it up for conversation. The chief of police came to me, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago now, and said that with the advent of spring, his officers are now regularly having to have conversations with folks who are staying in public places or even on private property, and they've been called to ask folks to move along if they're camping. And he started out by asking, is it possible for the council to consider creating a policy on encampments and overnight stays on the street or in public spaces? And we talked at length about it and agreed, Travis and I agreed that the scope of this is actually pretty significant. It's not just an enforcement question. He pointed out that even if we had an enforcement policy in place, it just means that he's going to enforce it in one place and then have to enforce it somewhere else, potentially the very next day. So we worked together to create this, and I'm just going to read it into the record. What we're proposing is the creation of yet another task force that would work on these questions together. The purpose of the task force would be to advise the council on developing a strategy to support those who are unhoused in our community and create a policy that employs best practices in the enforcement of rules regarding overnight stays and hanging out in front of or in close proximity to businesses or residences. The strategy would consider ensuring public safety, creating viable, safe options for people who are unhoused, especially during winter months or disaster events, supporting downtown businesses to help them thrive in Newport's designated downtown, effective collaboration models to involve all possible community partners, best enforcement practices in similar communities, and how to effectively prioritize law enforcement resources, and considering the links between public safety, lack of affordable housing, human trafficking, addiction, and drug trafficking in our community. And I won't rehearse the rest. The idea would be to have an open call for volunteers, but to hand select some folks that we'd like to serve as well from some key agencies in town. but the hope would be to have some residents and potentially at least one person, maybe several, who are actually experiencing what it means to be homeless, unhoused in our community. So if the council were to vote in favor of creating this task force, we would try and get the word out over the next 2 weeks and do some recruitment. And we would take action on naming the members to the task force on the 19th at our regularly scheduled meeting. So I'll put it out to see if you all have questions about what we're proposing here. Hold on just a second. Anybody on the council first? Okay, let's go to the community. Pam, go ahead.
Several years ago, we had a sort of equivalent to a task force, though it wasn't quite as grand as that. That was set up to talk about a warming shelter. A lot of work went into it. A couple of the churches were willing to participate. It didn't happen, and the real reason it didn't happen was that it was so bureaucratized, it fell apart. They had a whole series of bureaucratic rules that made total sense to bean counters and made no sense to real people living real lives. So, for example, to say that somebody had to be there by 6:30 p.m. or they couldn't get in, when they had no means of getting there and it required somebody bringing them, was total rubbish. So people couldn't follow the rules because the rules were set up for people who were leading stable lives. And well, if you're unhoused, it's not possible to be that stable and organized. And we have no transportation. And meanwhile, while everybody's still meeting, what happens to people who are unhoused? What happens, I've been in the school here, when a family has come in, they'd gone to NEK-TV, they were given a tent. Well, where the hell do they go to pitch their tent? And it's a great idea to have a task force to meet and to discuss it. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, let's put places there first and then talk about how to move on. Where does somebody pitch their tent? A single parent with 3 kids, where does she go?
Thank you. Other comments or questions in the community? I'd love to hear what y'all think about whether this is a good idea or you'd like to approach it a different way. Really, this is just, so far, this is just Travis and myself trying to come up with what we thought would be a useful strategy to get the questions on the table and deal with them as best we can.
I believe they've done similar things in the past over to the campground, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Last year, I think they had some people over there. So I mean, I'm totally in favor of doing something like this with the due diligence, starting the process and looking into doing something similar to that, or looking at viable locations.
I'm in support of forming a task force just because I can see that's been an effective way to gather folks that are knowledgeable on this topic and discussing an issue that there's many layers to our housing crisis, and this is one of the most evident ones that affect members of our community. And so not just thinking about a tent or even just renting out a motel room but how do we get these folks long-term help? And what, as a municipality, can we do, and what are other agencies that can step in and help cover those gaps? So I'm interested, and I'd make a motion if anybody else, but I don't want to cut off anybody else.
In my former life, I've often been the one to tell people, move, you can't be here. And it's hard to tell people to move when, where do I go?
You got nothing, right?
Not here. Not in the bank lobby, not in the ATM lobby. So it really, and I understand that did have some campsites available at Prouty, but that was a Band-Aid solution. And perhaps this will come up with and identify the resources we have and how they can be utilized effectively.
Well, this is effectively a statewide crisis, and
That's
the
right.
folks are
Right.
out there regardless, and so at least informing ourselves at the local level makes sense.
Yeah, I'll just say, I'm not interested in creating just a policy around enforcement without placing that policy in the context of the broader reality for folks. And frankly, neither is Travis. I mean, Travis, and by the way, he sends his regrets and his apologies. His son has made the playoffs, I think, in hockey, and he's in Sherbrooke tonight. So,
That's a big thing.
Should we reach out to Derby, for example? I know that they recently started, I think it's Ben's house at the old Derby Green. It's down in Johnson, is it Jenna's house? It's similar in nature. It's, I believe it's Ben's house. Mr. Wynick?
Right, Jenna's house has been around for quite a while.
Yeah, that was
Good
a
program.
Tetros, of GW Tetros. So, but the long and short is they too have resources, and they have the same problems we do.
is there anybody on council who feels moved to spend the next 2 weeks working with Travis and myself to try and do the recruitment piece?
I'm willing to do that.
Really? Great. Okay. All right, then I think oh, sorry, go ahead, Frank.
I hate to be the bad guy, but I'm gonna say something. So if, as a long-term member of this community, if there are people within my community that need help, I wholly support what you're saying. What I do want to tell you, however, you advertise a space for camping, and you will be taking care of a lot of people from the surrounding area. Okay, in fact, maybe farther than that, coming from healthcare and looking at the attraction of the Medicaid program in the state of Vermont, okay, and the relocation that has occurred in our area because of those benefits. You start creating a public place to camp, and you will get people from outside this community coming here specifically for that.
So I'm gonna shut you down there, Frank, in part because I think you're a step ahead of us.
Okay.
All we're doing tonight is agreeing that we've got a challenge that we need to respond to and setting up a task force. That task force is gonna spend a considerable amount of time looking at a variety of options and the implications of any path we might choose. So there will be a chance to talk about that. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, I entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Why don't you make the whole thing the way you want to make it, so I make sure we get it right.
I make a motion to form a task force on housing and security, public encampments, and community safety, with Travis as the main lead, like the staff lead for the task force.
Great, I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next item is a request to add Grants Administrator Frank Cheney and Mayor Rick Ufford Chase as authorized representatives for water infrastructure financing programs. Mr. Cheney, would you speak to this, please, and help folks know what they're saying?
I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself, Rick.
You're right.
Concerned.
No problem.
So this is about, the city has two revolving loan programs, which are effectively basically grants in the fact that if you do the project, it's basically reimbursement. These two revolving loans, one's for $22,000, one's for $95,200. They've been in place, one of them for 3 years or so. What we're asking for tonight is these grants need to, or revolving loans that are with the Vermont Loan Bank, okay, need to be administered, and we're asking that Rick be assigned the individual who has the signatory ability, and that I be assigned as an alternate. I can talk more about the projects themselves if you need me to. However, this is primarily associated with the Bluffside Pump Station project and the Gardner Park Siphon project.
Any questions for Frank? You all saw it was in your packet, 4 pages that I'll ask you to sign if you pass this tonight. Any questions for Frank?
So but if I'm not mistaken, Frank would be the alternate?
Actually, Frank and I and Tom would all be signers. At the moment, only Tom is the signer. So what we're trying to do is create a little structure around it. And the likelihood is that when we hire a city manager, I would come off as a signer and city manager would become a signer on behalf of the city.
So basically there's invoicing and some stuff that needs to be done, and realistically, that really falls more within the office functions than at the public works.
How long do these last for? How long are they open?
Until they're used or not used. The one of them's been open since 2019 and has not been used yet.
This is one of the many, I think the 23 different grants that Frank's been working on trying to clean up for us over the last 6 months.
We have some invoices that we can bill for and recoup some dollars.
Yeah, this is standard. This is a standard grant admin thing, and getting signatories. It's something that the council has approved.
They just call it a loan, but realistically, you spend the money. Once you've spent the money, you submit it for reimbursement, almost exactly like a grant. Okay, they're just calling it a revolving loan. It's forgiven if you complete the project. And like, for example, the Bluffside Pump project is already done. And this will pay for engineering and design, money that's already been spent.
How did we get a grant in 2019 without a project?
Tom has been has really spearheaded. This is part of the solid waste. Okay, yeah. So you have a number of different projects that were approved by the state of Vermont, and again, this is more, that application process is more in Tom's area. Okay, we also were able to get revolving loans to help with engineering and design. For instance, we have an ARPA grant to pay for the entire budget on the Bluffside Pump project. However, we also have a revolving loan program that's allowed to be used for the engineering and design, which is significant, $65,000, $70,000. That was paid for by the city out of its general fund, and we are allowed, okay, to borrow against this loan at the Vermont Loan Bank, which will be forgiven as long as the project's done. So this is one grant that is sort of free money.
Any other questions?
So
Jeff? Go ahead, Andrew.
I'm gonna ask, is there any kind of conflict being grants with you doing what you're doing and being a signer on these and being the grants administrator?
I can't invoice for reimbursement unless I'm on the.
Right.
Okay.
Actually, the short answer is it's kind of the opposite of that, actually. That
Yeah.
it would be typical practice for a grants administrator to be this authorized representative. And honestly, if we were in a stable staffing situation, it would be typical for a city manager and probably a grants administrator to sign off on such a thing. Jennifer?
So whatever we're signing off on, it's binding the city by the sounds of it, which is smacking of a contract. And we've been told for a while now that only the mayor can sign contracts. So I'm wondering how we're getting around that nuance.
So the loans actually were signed by the city, one in 2019 and one just barely. And that one was just executed by Rick. So the loans are a different animal, Jennifer. This is simply that at this particular point, Tom's the only person that can sign anything. All right, so Rick and I don't have the ability to draw the money off or have any communication or get any of the documentation. And we need to do the work, not Tom, basically.
So that
You
was,
want to speak to this, Tom, or no?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
that was question number one. Question number two is, I, as a resident, think that there needs to be a second pair of eyes on this. I'm not comfortable with all of that authority and power being centralized into one individual. I mean, this is money that's binding the city, and I think it's important to have a separation of powers, if you will, to have a second pair of eyes looking things over. And so I would ask that it be a member of the council. Maybe Mr. Manette with his legal experience, or, you know, I'm not comfortable putting it all in one person's hands. I want to see it.
Well, first of all, so I think you're confusing the issue a little bit. The council approved the loans themselves already. That's a council decision.
Which was a council decision.
Yeah.
I understand that that was a council decision, and I understand the total loan amount was approved by the council. But what happens in the trenches on a day-to-day basis is something quite different, and I think that it's important to have a second pair of eyes on it. I don't like the idea that it's all coming down to one person who's organizing it and billing it and invoicing it and signing off on it, and I don't like that idea. I like the separation of powers with a second set of eyes.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
So just to clarify, one of the projects is already done, and it's just a question of getting the money back into the checking account.
We've spent the money already, and in order to invoice, you have to be on the recognized list.
Okay. And this says change, which implies that somebody's on it already.
Yes, the person on it now is Tom.
Right, so you're adding more people, basically.
Yes,
Correct.
adding Rick and myself.
So in other words, if a bill came in, for example, or something, the three of you would authorize it, or at least be aware that Frank's got this $20,000 invoice that he's taking care of. That was my understanding when you had mentioned earlier.
Yes.
For one of these, you've spent the money already as a practical matter.
It's a practical matter.
You're
is
just
that
trying
We're gonna
to-
gather the invoices that we've already
Yeah,
spent.
you're just trying to submit them for reimbursement.
Yeah, because we've already spent the money.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you put them under Tom's signature?
Got it. Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council? I'd entertain a motion regarding the change of authorized representatives.
Oh, wait, did you say I make a motion to change the authorized representatives
To add
to add.
Frank Cheney and Rick Upper Chase.
Correct.
In our roles, actually, let's just do it the way it's written here, shall we?
Okay, thank
A motion to add Grants Administrator Frank Cheney and Mayor Rick Ufford Chase as authorized representatives for water infrastructure financing programs.
you. I make that motion.
Okay, so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further comment or question? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. I'll pass these 4 sheets down. Each one needs to be signed by council. Thank you, Frank. And Jim, I should have given this to you a little while ago. Let's see if I got this ready. Jim, those are the minutes that we passed earlier too. I'll just wait a moment while we do those signatures. Okay?
You want these back?
They can go to Frank.
I'll take one.
Actually, Frank, would you make copies of those and give the copies back to Jim for the minutes packet, please?
I can.
Thank you. Okay, items 8 and 9 are the annual financial plan for town highways and the certificate of compliance for town roads and bridge standards and network inventory. And this is a regular event, and I'm going to ask Mr. Bernier to speak to it, please. Those items were in your packet. You should have them available.
So Kevin is probably familiar with this every year. Every spring I meet with this District 9 engineers up there and we go over our financials. If you look at that, and that's all based on what we will get for our aid, Vermont roads aids for class 1, 2, and 3 monies. If you look at some of the numbers, a lot of the numbers I've written in there all pertain to my public works budget, plus capital, paving, and equipment and stuff. Gets signed off every year by the city council.
So let's take them one at a time. The first is the annual financial plan for town highways. It's the document that looks like this, that has the chart on it. Are there any comments or questions for Tom? Hearing none, any community questions? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to pass the annual financial plan for town highways.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Got a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. I will sign and send this your way. One more. It's on the second page there. Second one is the certificate of compliance for town road and bridge standards and network inventory. This is the one that just looks like this. Was in your packets also. Any questions for Tom about this one? Any questions or comments from the community?
I'll just comment on it.
Please.
So that, we sign that every year. That's just to confirm to the state that we have accepted their specifications for infrastructure.
Okay, so I'll accept a motion to approve the certificate of compliance for town road and bridge standards and network inventory.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I'll pass these down. Tom, do you need these back?
Yes.
Okay, so when they're signed, Tom will take them, and Tom, if you do the same thing, make copies and get the copies back to Jim, please? Yeah. Thank you. Can you bring up our document and share this one? Oh, that's what I got to say. That's it. Is that all of them? Yeah, I missed it on all of them, didn't I? Thank you, no. Thanks for catching it. Oh, thank you, sorry about that.
Frank, bring these to town.
Yeah, could you sign those, make copies of those also for us, Frank?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Tom gets the originals. Okay,
You don't see the checkered. I don't know why.
you, with the checkered? What do you mean?
Yeah.
That's
I
okay.
want it all nice, so you can follow the lines.
Okay, the next item is one that I put on the agenda for the evening, and that is I have the hope that we can bring up any topics that seem to us to be pretty important, because it feels like we're juggling a lot, but we've gotten through the first 2 months and found our footing, and we've gotten through the initial recommendations from both the Water and Sewer and the Financial Reporting and Fiscal Practices Committee task forces. And so I know there are some things on council members' minds, and my hope was that we could lift them up tonight, name them without discussing them, just kind of give a brief description, and then agree. Carter has done me the favor of creating a little spreadsheet here so that we could actually kind of work on where we would like to lay them out. I want to be clear that I'm hoping we will not tonight, with this discussion, bind ourselves to a particular date that we have to discuss something. If something else comes up or we just can't get to it, I trust this body to make some new decisions and continue to prioritize things. It's mostly a way so that the whole community knows the things that are on our minds and has a chance to offer input, and we can kind of lay out a schedule over the next few months of when we try to take those on. So I'll just open it up first to the council for discussion of any items you'd like to see on here. And let's see.
I
Yeah,
filled it in.
please.
So there's a couple things that I know we're gonna need to talk about soon. One is the Municipal Energy Resilience Program. It's a grant, and we have till the end of next year to spend it, so we kind of need to get going on it. So I put that at the top of next month. And then going back to the appropriations letter with Lynn Rubley and our action steps, basically outlined that we're gonna do kind of an internal review, look at our policies, look at neighboring policies. So by July, we should be having that conversation, or at least be able to report out on it, and then with August. So I don't know if we could put, and then I'll just put down here to maybe accept that policy, but. Anyway.
Okay,
So
those are two things on Carter's mind. Everybody understands the reviewing the appropriations policy is what came up when we realized that we had not taken action on a request from the Canusa 360 Arts Collaborative, right? And then realized, oh, there's actually a policy that says that 5% of voters have to sign off on a what do you call it, Jim? Petition, thank you. Don't know why that escaped me, on a petition. So we agreed, I think, that we would like to come back and just have a deeper conversation about that together and make sure that we're understanding and interpreting that policy appropriately. So those are two things. What else is on council members' minds?
I have a couple of things. The first is the personnel policy. Although the department heads have been pretty good in tackling the important matter of the finances of water and sewer, this still needs to be corrected because there's overtime issues. That's one.
Can I speak to that actually first, Kevin,
Yeah.
before we go on? I want to say this one's been on my mind as well because we started talking about trying to revisit this question last summer. What I would picture is an evening of education at a council meeting, regular or special, whatever it ends up being, in which we would bring in kind of some best practices from other communities, have our attorneys speak with us. I picture all of this, unless there's some unusual event, all of this being open and not in executive session. But we'd be working on kind of what are all the things that we should be aware of when we think about what our personnel policy should look like and whether the current policy that was approved a year ago should stand or should be reformed in any way.
Yeah. Definitely have a discussion about it. Another one would be we're going to hire eventually a city manager and assistant. Right now there are like 2 different job descriptions for the assistant. I guess depending how you want to go, view those job descriptions and come up with one. Maybe even look at the city managers and see, it's just the way we want to go, and what will the assistant and the city manager do. And the last one is, and I spoke with Travis today, I asked him about the sale of the armory, and he said it probably won't be till next year, which fortunately gives him time to explore grants and that, but that may be something we want to keep in mind as well. And a very minor thing, but it is happening this year, is there's a committee for the 250th celebration of Vermont, our anniversary. You must remember that.
From last year?
We have a committee, I don't know what we,
We established a committee last year?
I remember one person was on it, Audra Pitts.
Sounds like something we should go back and look at, unless somebody else remembers. I don't remember. I remember seeing it in a packet, but I don't remember what we did.
Yeah, there was something that every town needs to do something, and what are we doing?
Okay, that's great, thank you. I totally forgotten about it. Andrew?
So Kevin kind of stole my thunder there with the positions, the admin assistant and the city manager position. I really feel that those are, strong, those are two things that really need to be filled, because there's a lot of people everybody's doing a great job, but I just don't want burnout. And that's the first thing that comes with people trying to do several different jobs at one time. So I'd really like to define the job descriptions and put those back out. Or at least start with one and then see what we have for candidates and move forward with that. That's all I had.
In terms of city manager, we should be looking at the statute that authorizes the creation of city managers and conforming our job description to the actual state legal requirements. The other point that occurred to me is something that may be being addressed by the budget finance task force, and that is that at some point each year an updated 5-year capital plan comes before the council. I know that they used to send a courtesy copy to the planning commission kind of after the fact. Here it is. But the question I have regarding the capital plan is, how does that tie into budgeting? How does it tie into what's being created for reserves? Because capital plan implies that they're expenses that aren't typically absorbed within 1 year. How and to what extent have reserves been created in the past? Should there be more attention paid to reserves for some of those items? That to me is a significant one. And then the other somewhat related point is that there was a period of time where the city was budgeting a certain amount of money each year to rebuild a street or streets, and without borrowing. And the rebuild encompassed not just throwing new pavement down, but rebuilding the base, rebuilding water and sewer lines, essentially repairing everything and mapping it out. And I don't know if that's been budgeted for in recent years or not. I know for a while it seemed like there was construction along those lines every year, and Tom could probably shed a lot more light on it, but just raising the issue for now in terms of whether it's feasible to get back to that at some point.
Okay. I've got 3 others that I want to put on the list. One is the elephant in the room that has been consuming me and several of us, which is the questions of how we're going to manage the long-term accumulated debt, which I suspect we're going to have to take on at our very next meeting, and then figure out kind of what the next steps are. And then we will continue to have reports and recommendations from both of those existing task forces. So this is not to say that there's all kinds of regular work that will continue. We're just making sure that we don't lose track of some of these other items. The second one is I would really love to have a conversation by mid to late summer about what our plan is for how we're going to create a budget for 25-26, be 26-27. So I'd love to go into that conversation by late summer so that we all know the process, the community understands how it's going to work, and we spend, I suspect, most of the fall working on it so that it feels well considered by the time we get to it. And then the last one is I met this week with Chief Lacoste and Andrew Carbine from the fire department. And their recommendation is that we consider the formation of another task force that would spend a year working on a 5-year plan for where we're headed with our fire department. Because they're looking down the road and seeing some real challenges in front of us, and they don't want to get blindsided by those challenges. So sometime early this summer, I suspect we'll want to come back and have a conversation about the formation of another task force to try and work on that over a period of time. So that's a lot, y'all. Let's just turn to the community and see, are there things that we have not brought up that we need to be taking on that you all would like to talk about? Tom?
Sure, I just want to, so Carter, you mentioned the MRF, and I haven't reached out to the contractor, but I think we're very close to getting a bid packet out for that, for those 3 facilities. So I just want to inform you. I want to elaborate on what Kevin said with the personnel policy with overtime. That has, and there was a year ago on February 26th, and that's been a huge hindrance to my staff, really, my 2 non-union foremen who were the 2 affected with that. I'd really like to reopen that. The other big part of that was, you know, it hasn't affected me too hard, but we'd really like to get our safeguards back. We have no grievance procedures. They were stripped of us back in February of that year, and I think that's very critical that the employees, all the non-union employees should have that. The unions have it. We don't have that at all.
I'm assuming, just so you know, Tom, that would be part of the personnel policy.
It would be, but I know he'd mentioned the overtime, and this has been an ongoing thing for longer than it should have. Just wanted to elaborate on it. I'd rather see that come up sooner than later. Just to talk about the 5-year capital plan that John had mentioned. We all, I know I did, every year we submit one, and it never came to the council for approval. Every year we update our 5-year capital plan, and it probably would be a good thing to have a discussion with everybody to see financially where you want, especially me, to go with it, because it did always evolve around water, sewer, and roads. I didn't just pave a road and call it done. We usually tore the road up, and it involved new sewer system, changing water services, maybe some drainage. And so, yeah, as far as the money goes, that, you know, we might have to take a hard look at that, but yeah, we definitely should talk about when the department head should get one going again and get it approved.
Thank you. Frank, and then Jennifer, and then
I'd like to add something to this. I really would like my bylaws to be approved sometime this summer. And that's going to require 2 public meetings of this group and some examination on the part of you of a 300-odd page document that is fairly significant in its nature. So please keep some time for that if and when we get to that point. Right?
yeah, so I'll just update everyone. I've spoken several times with our attorneys about that. Where we are is the bylaws were submitted to the attorneys. We're waiting for the attorneys to review them. They have assured us that, what was the date?
30th of June.
That's what I thought, that no later than the 30th of June, they will have the reviewed bylaws and any recommendations, at which point the council will look at their recommendations, and I think we look at them first, right, Frank?
No, we'll do a
Oh, no, you go
public
first.
hearing first, then we'll send it to you. If you have changes, you've got to come back to us, we make adjustments, then send it back to you, 2 public hearings, and then a 3rd meeting to get them approved.
So it's a good point that we should plan on that consuming some time in the months of July and August, because our goal would be to get those bylaws done by late summer, early fall at the latest. Thank you. Jennifer, I'll just ask you to stand, please.
Sure. So back in the day, on the first meeting of every month, the council was presented with the budget to actuals report, and that practice stopped. And I would like to see that revisited, and I actually, at the next council meeting, would, as a taxpayer, would be appreciative if you guys had some idea of where you stand in this current fiscal year, department by department, in terms of budget to actuals, and share that with the public.
I'll just say, we share your concern. We'll do the best we can. The Finance Committee is working hard, and that's absolutely part of what they're working on. It's challenging to get the report you're talking about quickly, right now, but it's not impossible, and we're working on it. So I understand where you're going.
No, I thought it was just a report they ran.
It's not. That's what I'm telling you. There's a lot of anomaly in the current reporting that gives me no confidence that what we're looking at is real. So we've started already with NEMRIC. We agreed last week to, I could just call this an update, to move to the cloud, and then we signed a contract with NEMRIC to begin immediately. The cloud switchover took place on Thursday night. We were running smoothly by 9:30 on Friday morning in the cloud. And Chip Stearns, who is going to be our lead from NEMRIC, who's working with us on this, spent the day-to-day loading us up with a whole bunch of questions about things that he sees as concerns in his first look at this. So believe me when I say, nobody's asleep on this. Everybody's trying to figure out how to get us to the best information that we can have so that we can make a good decision on the 19th about how we're going to manage cash flow from now to the end of the year, and then where we go from there. We're working it. Ann?
Yeah, I'm glad that John brought up job descriptions for the city manager, but he only mentioned the state statute. And I think it's really important to realize that our charter addresses what the city manager's tasks are. And I'm not sure how to integrate what the state requirements might be with the charter, but I do remember somewhere in the state statutes, and I don't know if it applies to this situation, it says that when you've got a charter that's clear, it governs, and that the state statute fills in some of the places where the charter might not address something. So I don't know whether or not that governs at all, but I'm just asking that when you think about what your job description should look like, it should include the charter, and you need to figure out what controls. If there's a discrepancy, and also if there's an absence of any information, does the state statute come in to take care of it? So just another thing to look at.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions from the community? Okay, so what I'd like to do is review these things that I've got a list of them right here. Carter's been trying to keep up with them. And talk about where we actually think it makes sense to try and take these things on and lay them out on a schedule. So you all should be able to see. Carter, can you make that any bigger?
Yes. Okay, a couple things. I can zoom over here.
Yeah, there we go.
It's a little bit bigger. I'm gonna make this full screen. 1 second. Then you can see more columns. I can also drag and drop. This is most of them.
I think this is good.
Yeah.
This is good.
Okay.
So on the 19th, we know we need to focus much of our energy on the question of financial reporting and a plan to manage accumulated debt. So my recommendation is that we not load that up. There's one other item that I think we agreed a month and a half ago that Andrew would work with me on the process to try and rewrite a job description, circulate it, and hire, bring back a recommendation, having followed some kind of process on hiring for a financial and office administrative position. And I think, Kevin, I think you were the one, is it you who brought up the question of trying to look at both that and the city manager at the same time?
Yeah, well, we have two different job descriptions for the
office.
assistant. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So what I'd like to recommend, I'm afraid of making the perfect the enemy of the good. And if we link the creation of the city manager job description right now to this too, I'm afraid that it becomes pretty overwhelming to try and get the short-term work done of hiring somebody. So what I would recommend is that Andrew and I, over the next 2 weeks, look at both those job descriptions that were circulated, review them with the department heads, and kind of look at where we stand now based on the work of the task forces, what we're really trying to hire for, and then come back with a job description that would be discussed in open meeting. We don't need an executive session for that, with the council, hopefully on the 19th, so that we could move ahead with a hiring process by the middle or end of the month for that first position. And then we'd come back later in the process for a conversation about the city manager position. Does that sound all right?
So I'm gonna kind of just organizing by doing over here. For like, right now that's something, you can't see it because they're starting. So I'm moving right now, hiring office admin is kind of like a goal, but we are wanting that to be addressed more in June or?
No, I'm saying that we would actually bring it back on the 19th, hopefully.
Okay.
And if we can't make it, we'll come back and tell you why and come back at a later date with a job description.
Okay.
So 2 major items would be on that next agenda besides any housekeeping work we have to do.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So that takes us through the 19th and into our first meeting in June. And I'm hearing you say, Carter, that it would be really helpful to make sure we fully understand the, say it again, municipal
Energy resilience plan.
Energy
called
resilience.
MERP. And my understanding with Tom was that he wanted input from the council on what direction we wanted to go with those funds. So that's why I was holding off on, well, we've got some good paperwork and we're like good standing there, but it's just getting contractors on board with the reduced windows that we do have in northern Vermont for construction. So there are some things we could start to think about, but good to know that we're not just sleeping on it, so.
So could we put that on the agenda for the first meeting in June? Does that sound all right to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that one. I think we don't schedule that, well, I think we could put the bylaws on for sometime July, August, right? Hopefully, certainly by actually July 7th, we might even be able to pull the first. No, we probably need until the middle of the month for the council, don't we? So you can have time to look at it first.
It depends on what the legal review looks like. I suspect
So-
late in July,
Late July for bylaw stuff.
Because the planning commission's going to be.
considering everything we've got going with the MERP too, that, the beginning of June might be a little bit optimistic.
Yes, so I think we're really looking at, well, here's a question. July 7th does anybody know how the holiday is going to work, the 4th of July holiday this year?
The 4th is a Friday,
So what's the legal holiday?
the Friday the 4th.
Friday the 4th. So we could hold our regular meeting on Monday night the 7th. And that means that we'll also have a meeting on the 21st. So I think that's right, Carter, that we would have our first look at whatever the planning commission brings to us on the bylaws on the 21st, just like you have it. Okay, so that's that one. And it would be my hope that by June, I think by June, we should have the ability to start just looking at thoughtful financials every meeting. So you all will get whatever we can accumulate as best practice to look at financials each meeting and help us kind of stay on top of it. So that'll go into every meeting, hopefully starting certainly no later than the middle of June, maybe as early as June 2nd. Okay. The fire department, I wonder if we could just have a discussion. We could ask the fire department to come to us with a recommendation on a task force and its job description by the late June meeting.
Okay, so this is like the third, are we?
We do not meet
do this.
unless we call a special meeting. We don't meet.
Okay,
Right.
all right. So when you're talking about fire department, you're talking about the second.
Yes, so the 16th, we would ask the fire department to come, if they are prepared, to give us a job description for a proposed task force on a 5-year plan for the fire department. Okay? So that's that one. And this brings us up to fire department 5-year plan. I would put the personnel policy as a high priority beginning in early July. And I suspect it will take more than one meeting, so maybe we look at it in July at both meetings and hopefully come to some decisions by the end of the month. Does that sound all right to everybody? Okay, if we do that, we're getting there. It'd be nice to know what we agreed about that 250th anniversary. How do we figure that out? Nobody remembers, huh?
It was an appointment to a committee. It was one local representative that
Who got appointed to a committee.
A state level committee, and it's in the minutes somewhere, but
God knows where.
It will be looking for a needle in a haystack, I suspect. But you ought to be able to go back through agendas, because I think it was on the agenda.
Perhaps, let me look into it.
Will you check, Kevin? Great.
Yeah, it's got to be on a website someplace.
So, yeah, let's find out who we appointed, what's going on, and should we be doing some kind of a local version here of our own, right? So let's,
Stickies out there,
right.
a whole bunch of them.
So, Kevin, if you'll bring that back, we'll take it anytime you think you're ready, okay? Just don't let us lose track, please. All right, that's that one. I'm just going to give a quick update on the Armory Park building. Here's where we stand. Travis and I think I may have mentioned, Travis and I met with representatives from the National Guard about 3 weeks ago now. They had a short-lived plan that they wanted to try and accelerate the sale of the building and do it within the next 3 months because they were hoping to use the money to move more quickly to build in Lindenville. We raised significant questions about our ability to complete that, not just our financial ability, but also things like we would want to do a full environmental review of the property before we do it. There are a lot of, we'd need an engineer to go in and look at how we'd have to change the property around and what's a budget. And so they came back fairly quickly after that and said, okay, let's go back to where we were, the agreement we never executed, and try again. So I looked over that agreement, changed the dates on it, and sent it back to them, and we're waiting for them to get it back to us. But basically what they're hoping is that we'll sign an intent to buy, and the likelihood is that it would actually be at least 2 years away before they would get serious about it. So I don't think we need anything immediately. I think we wait for them, John, and then come back to it. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, you certainly want to be able to do the due diligence in terms of an environmental audit.
Absolutely.
Just thinking historically about all the equipment that used to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things we're concerned about is if we do that environmental phase 1, it's good for 6 months. So the question is, do we do it and then know that we'll probably have to do it again 2 years down the road, but we do it because we need it for planning purposes. It's not super expensive to do a phase 1 and find out what's going on, so. Okay, so that's that one.
Rick?
Yep.
Were there concerns about asbestos in the building?
We don't know.
Okay.
We don't know. All of that would have to be done in an environmental audit. The good news is the building has been maintained well. It's got a relatively new roof. It's got a new HVAC, or at least H. I don't know about the air conditioning units, but it's got a new heating system in it. So the building is not in bad shape, at least according to them. We'll see. I think we could put the appropriations thing relatively far out, like maybe toward the end of summer or early fall even, because we're not going to have to really mess with that until the election in March, right?
Yeah.
So people would be circulating petitions in December and January if that's what
the
system,
if that's where we end
what the
up.
policy actually says.
Yeah. So what if we put that end of August or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember the letter I sent was, we were trying to address it in time to spread the word to all organizations and just to set the status quo, to give them an adequate time heads up, and then not put that back on the city staff that are actually managing and putting together that ballot, so that fits. I will shift it.
Okay. I love the idea of looking carefully at a 5-year capital plan, and I would unite that with the questions that John was raising about doing things like budgeting to rebuild roads. And I guess what I would recommend is that we try and do it late summer at the latest, so that whatever we're planning for the budget for next year is impacted by that. Tom and Frank are here.
That, I'll have to look, I'll get back to you, Rick, is it, that, we're mandated to do that, and there's a certain date that we always have to.
Oh, that's good to know.
And it's, I believe, we're probably behind the 8 ball a little bit.
Okay, so will you bring that back to us and tell us when we need to pay attention, and we'll just do it whenever we need to.
The problem I may have is not knowing the financial part of it, of where we may or want to go, or can we go, because it affects water, sewer, and public works all together.
Yeah, I think this year, Tom, I would picture this being a pretty collaborative process. So as soon as you know what the requirements are in terms of timing, I picture you and other department heads making any recommendations, having both water and sewer and the financial groups looking at those recommendations and bringing them to council for consideration here. So the collaboration itself could take some time, but I think it's well worth our while to really have everybody involved in it this year. Okay. All right, we're getting there. We're almost done. So a budgeting plan, which should include trying to put our foot on the gas on trying to get an audit done as quickly as possible after the close of business at the end of the fiscal year. So I wonder if we could, can we put it in July, late June or early July, to look at how we want to manage budgeting? So this is just a process conversation. What's the timeline we're going to try and follow as we work on a budget through the fall? Does that sound all right to everybody?
Yeah, end of June.
End of June?
Yeah, I can put that there. And then to clarify the 5-year capital plan, when you say late summer, what does that mean to you? I put it in September, but I was like,
That's fine.
Okay.
I think, yeah, early, unless
Or-
Tom comes to us and says we've got to do
like
something
that's-
faster.
I guess that's true. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so that takes care of the budgeting plan. It will not surprise me if we need a special meeting the end of June,
Okay.
especially given the fact that we may end up next week having to, or 2 weeks from now, having to warn a special election, a bond election. So just, we may have to throw some extra meetings in here. And then the last one that seems pretty critical to me is the reviewing of the city manager job description and preparing ourselves so that by early fall, like October, we're ready to, hopefully we've done our work. We're ready to start talking about a timeline to put the word out, because it's going to take us, a minimum of 3 months, and could be longer to hire somebody. So if we took on the review of the city manager job description, looking at the charter, looking at the statutes, looking at the history, looking at all of that, we could try and work on that in September, probably at more than one meeting is my guess.
And the fun thing with September is the first Monday is Labor Day.
Yeah, so I think we've already changed that one,
Yeah.
right? So,
Does that become Tuesday, or do we just shift? to the
no,
next
we shift a week
Okay.
later, and then we do 2 in a row,
Sweet. Oh, okay, good to know.
right? So somewhere Jim's got a published list of what we've already agreed to for a council schedule, and I know we took Labor Day into account on it.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, any questions, any things you think there's gonna be a lot, and some of this may shift and slide depending on how things develop, but I feel better just talking about all the things that we've got to deal with. Any questions or concerns about this?
Is there any big items that come up in the summer that we have to address yearly?
That's a good question. You all know, most of you in the community know better than we would around this table. Or Jim, if you have any ideas, or Tom, anything we should be anticipating besides the bylaws? No, we're just going to deal with it as it comes.
Summer's pretty quiet.
Good. Not this year.
No,
Hold on to your hats.
I've been holding on since ship called this morning.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot. Okay. I don't think we want an action on this. I think this is just a working document. Carter, what's the best way for us to, can we put this in a Google Doc that all of us would have access to?
You know, sure.
It might even be that we could put this in a Google Doc on the city manager file and it would automatically populate to the calendar? How would that work?
I don't think it does, and I think there's some questions about using Google Docs amongst yourselves.
No, the only reason it would be there is for information purposes. We wouldn't make any changes except in a public meeting. So I think we're okay with that. I could be educated that I'm wrong.
Could you share it so that the link, whoever has the link has access to it and post it on the website?
That's kind of what I'm wondering, is if there's a way to manage it so that it's a public document and each time we change it, people will be able to see the changes that we've made. Maybe you and I can play with that a little bit.
Yeah, because I think there's definitely a way to do it. Can I say confidently in this chair?
Or can you just put an effective date in it and then turn it into a PDF and post the PDF and then...
And then just change the PDF each time.
Change the effective date?
I think that's actually, we could just include it in the minutes each meeting with any updates that we've made, and that would give people confidence that what they're looking at has a date on it. I kind of like that, actually. Google Docs can get really wonky if you're not careful with how they get changed. So, okay, so for tonight, Carter, if you could figure out a way to, can we print this and get it to Jim to include in the minutes packet?
Sure.
I want it to be labeled in some way that says, this is not official action by the council. It does not bind us to this schedule. It's just a working document for us to keep us on track. Any questions about that? Any questions in the community about that? Because I do not want to fight about this 2 months from now when something else overtakes us, okay? All right. There you go. That was the speak now or forever hold your peace moment. So, okay. I think we've done everything in that agenda item. Moving on, the next one should be quick. This is just opportunities for council members to represent the city. On May 14th, which is a Wednesday night, I actually just discovered that I may actually be able to be here. I was planning to be away the whole week, but it looks like I don't have to leave till Thursday morning, and I'd like to be present. So I'm wondering if there's one council member who'd be willing to meet with me, with Mike Moran from the Northern Forest Center. And I'll just, for those of you who haven't been around this table a long time, Northern Forest Center is the group that has been doing work for years on supporting northern New England forest economies. So actually their first work here in Newport was with Built by Newport, helping them to do some kind of best practices work. But they've, over the years, done a lot of work around outdoor recreation. They helped us with the plan to put new signage up on the waterfront path. And now they've moved in the last couple of years into becoming developers of housing in St. Jay, Lancaster, New Hampshire, Berlin, I think, and then over in Maine in a couple of communities. And they are exploring whether there's some role that they might be useful in playing in our long-term development strategy. So this is just an exploratory first visit by Mike Moran, who is their Vermont and New Hampshire director. So that's what it is. Is there one of you who'd be willing to meet with me with Mike on that night?
That would be the only one I could do.
Is that okay with everybody if Kevin takes that one with me? Great. Okay.
When and where?
Probably here, Kevin, would make it easiest, unless you'd like to invite us to your home and make it easier, but whatever you want to do. It's just going to be you and me and Mike, I think.
Whatever's best.
Okay, you and I'll work it out.
Okay.
And I don't know a time yet. It's just that evening sometime.
Okay.
Okay, so Kevin and Rick on that one. On the 26th, I'll just state that it's the practice for any council members who are around and available and would like to participate to be a part of the Memorial Day Parade. Jim, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, it's only about a 10-minute walk from here to Gardner Park. We step off at 10 o'clock sharp. And if it's raining, there won't be a parade. Everything will be in here. Rick, Mayor, normally gives a short speech over there. The rest of the rally gets to do is walk and look handsome and pretty.
We can do that.
Dressed in red, white, and blue. You don't have to do it.
All right, so are any folks know that you're going to be around, just so we know who's planning to be here?
I'm planning to be.
You're planning to be with us, Andrew? Kevin, I know you were last year. Are you around that weekend? Are you around and likely to be able to participate in the parade? Or meet us over there or whatever?
Probably not.
Okay. John?
I had something come up today that's going to kill off every weekend for the next 6 weeks.
Okay. And you're not around. Okay, looks like it's you and me, Andrew. All right, so Rick and Andrew on the 26th. This one, I think, Carter, you've already said you can do. There's a Stansted Arts Gala that I think, given the current state of relationships on the border, it would be really wise for us to attend. Newport Downtown Development has offered to buy 2 tickets. I'm not available, but Felicia can go, and Carter said that she could go and actually represent the city of Newport. So Carter and Felicia will do that one together. And then these other 2 are on the 31st, and I don't, it's not the end of the world if we can't do it, but I would really be grateful if there's somebody who could make themselves available on Saturday the 31st at 1 p.m. for the groundbreaking of the new Living Waters Hospice Care facility that's going to be built up on the property of Church of God, right? That's the Church of God. Larry Wall's, where Larry Wall is the pastor, but right behind Derby Community National Bank. And I've been a part of that conversation and encouraging for 2 years now, because I think it would be such a critically important piece for our community to have access to a residential hospice care facility that doesn't exist anywhere in northern Vermont right now. So if there's anyone who could make it to that on our behalf, I'd be grateful, since I'm away that weekend. And then that same day, I got a call from a bluegrass band, the name of which I can't remember at the moment. It's going to be playing at the Haskell on the 31st. They're willing to give 2 tickets to anybody who'd be willing to come, and along with a council member from Stansted, just say a couple of words about friendship across the border at the beginning of the concert, and then stay for the concert if you like. Anybody available for either of those that you know of, or do you want to just let me know?
I think I can do the bluegrass one,
Great.
as long as I get to dance.
I may be able to do the groundbreaking.
Oh, that would be great, Andy, if you could do that. Okay. Carter, will you both just get back to me to confirm, and I will let them know that you plan to be there on our behalf. Okay. And then, Carter, did you want to say something about the Pride event too?
So NEK Pride Fest is coming back for the 3rd year, and the Rainbow Coalition is cordially invites all members of the city council to join in walking in the parade. You can do more if you want, get a float. I personally get the megaphone and I get to conduct it. And then Rick, I know, is going to be towards the front representing the inclusive city that we are. But I just wanted to put on your radar, it is June 23rd. Kickoff is at noon. And it is standard. We walk to Gardner Park, and it's slowly been growing. It was a good initial kickoff a couple of years ago. It was well received, so they did it again, and it got bigger. And so, yeah, we're just planning for the same good fun.
Thank you.
Just putting it out there.
Okay. I think that's it. Anything else on upcoming events that should be on our radar? Anything from the community about things that you think we're missing? All right. Public comment. Anybody signed up? Ann, you're signed up, yes?
No, I'm good.
You're good. Okay. No public comment this evening? Nobody online? Joseph, Jeff, Jennifer? I'll consider that a no. So let's do item 13, new business. Jim, any new business?
No.
Okay. Kevin?
Nothing.
John?
None.
Andrew?
None.
Carter? And I have none. Old business. Run the other direction. Carter?
No, I responded, I mentioned it, the Lynn Rubley letter, so that's been going out. We'll continue that conversation about appropriations. So.
Bike rodeo.
Oh, and the bike rodeo! I'm throwing the bike rodeo this weekend. Everybody keep their fingers crossed for good weather. I heard some awful statistic that we haven't had a nice weekend since sometime in January. And that's been really crushing on my hopes and dreams. But it should be really fun. I got 6 bikes to raffle off. A number of partners are coming out, and it just should be a hoot and a half for any youngins that are from 2 to 12, I would say, are like strategy. That's the target, I suppose. But it's just a way to start summer safely, get your bike tuned up, practice those skills in a fun way, get some cool swag.
Timing, so people could show up and actually be supportive?
Yeah, from 10 to 1. Check it out.
10 to 1 on Saturday at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
There's also flyers, right?
Yeah,
Great.
flyers there.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Andrew, anything?
We're continuing to get kudos to DPW for the work they did with the playground structure and the new playground equipment. So, Tom, great job there. I've had 7 people, I think, mention it to me in the last week. Their kids think it's great. So, great job over there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. John?
Yeah, I've heard the same thing about the playground.
Pretty excited.
Exactly.
I got the best seat in the city because we sit right above the playground and watch it all day long. It's just fabulous. It's really fun. Kevin?
Nothing.
Nothing. Jim?
Don't forget to vote tomorrow.
There we go. That's what I was waiting for. Tomorrow, please remind everybody you know who lives in Newport to come out and vote tomorrow for a city council seat. Okay? And I have nothing else to add on that. So I misprinted, no, I got it right here. May 19th. Regular next meeting will be May 19th at 6 p.m. Do I have a motion to set that meeting?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion passes. And I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion passes. Thanks for a great evening, everybody.